semester, you know that for several years running now, we came up with a title we liked and we stuck with it. And that title is Capstones and Stepping Stones. So our program tonight is going to be made up of our seniors who are enrolled in their senior capstone project. They each had to do a full-length research paper as well as a creative project. They're given the choice of whether they want to talk about one more or the other more, and they're at the very least reminded to give us a 1 to 2 sentence debriefing about what your other project was. And also on the show we have a bunch of works from Dr. Furman's 3D2, so you can see all these really cool setups with the, we're gonna have some live performances here. We have our very first piece from multimedia audio production. And it's going to be a great show. Again, we're so thankful that you're here. Please note that we had a nice size graduating class this year. So we're going to be doing this all over again. Tomorrow night, same time, same place, also free, no ticket required. And it's going to be an entirely different show. So let's get on with it.
I'm just going to set up real fast. Hello everyone, my name is Emma and I am a graduating senior in the music technology class here at MSU. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my research as well as my creative portion of my senior capstone project for the semester. I'm going to keep my research a little bit short and sweet so that I can really get into the bulk of my creative project. But essentially what I did my research on was the effects of nonprofit recording studios on youth in music production. So I specifically focused on the nonprofit recording studios that already exist out there, which is not very many of them, and they're typically in bigger cities like New York and LA and Chicago. And I wanted to really look at what could happen if we placed these nonprofit recording studios in smaller, more rural areas in the US for children who don't typically have access to that themselves. What I concluded with this is that nonprofit recording studios for kids in rural areas will allow them to have access to high quality and affordable resources, meaningful connections to people in the industry, an introduction to possible careers in music, an increase in positive mental health and social skills, and hands-on learning that students wouldn't otherwise get at home or in the classroom. This is something that's very personal to me. I'm very passionate about it as someone who grew up in Wisconsin. I've been surrounded by incredibly talented people all through middle and high school who just couldn't really get their music out there or get their voices heard because of the lack of communal spaces and resources in these rural areas in the United States. And so some ideas that I've had for the future to kind of combat this issue is that one, it starts in the classroom and at home. Just simply like getting the information to kids that careers in music can exist and that you can be a successful musician without, having rich parents or being a Nepo baby or something like that. Music technology, it exists and it's real, and not many people know that. And so simply just telling kids this information right off the bat and instilling it in their minds early in their education, I think is very important. From there, creating programs that include free videos or after-school programs for kids who don't have other forms of access. So even if they can't physically make it into the studio, giving them ways to access it online, free programs, tutorials that you don't have to pay a tuition or a program fee for, I think could be very beneficial. And then creating a system of music technology rentals similar to the checkout that we do here in the School of Music, but on a more broad community sense, where kids can have access to high quality and what would be expensive resources made very affordable for them. And now, obviously, creating these nonprofit organizations is a lot easier said than done. It relies very heavily on donations from the community and grants and funds. and from groups of people who care very deeply about the success of the future generations of musicians like myself and like many of you. So this is just something that I'm very grateful to have gotten my foot in the door for research, and I hope to continue this research even past graduation and further into my music career. So that was what my research was essentially, and now I'll get on to my creative portion, which was my EP. I wrote this EP. It's a 5-track EP that was written, composed, recorded, mixed, and mastered by myself. We spent 9 hours in Studio A one Saturday a couple months ago, just recording the entire thing. We tracked all of it live from Studio A into Nuendo. Huge shout out to my buddies Cole and Alex for helping me in the recording process. It was a very long process, and I simply could not have done it all on my own. We mic'd up an entire drum kit, my vocals, my guitar, and a piano, and we just stood there for 9 hours, and it was very taxing already to just like stand there and sing and play guitar for that long, so I couldn't imagine having to record it on my own either, so I'm very grateful for that. From there, I took all of the stems, all the audio stems from the Nuendo session, and I put each one into a different Ableton Live session, and I mixed and mastered each song individually in Ableton Live, again with the help from my classmates and my professors. With the mixing and mastering process, I would not have been able to do it without their constructive criticism and input. I was able to take all of that into consideration and come up with something that I'm incredibly proud of. This is the track list, as you can see on the right here. And I'm going to be sharing with you track number 2, which is titled Soil and Seed. This song is very personal to me, the lyrics and the composition, and I am very excited to share it with you all. What you'll hear is my vocals as well as my guitar, and then I have a drummer and a violinist with me as well. And all of the other sounds that you're hearing were made in post-production, either in the East-West or the Contact Native Instruments sample library that we have here at MSU. So, without further ado, I will play the song. And I couldn't embed it because the file's too big. But thank you guys so much for listening, and here's the song now.
Of paper on a tree. In the real world, you were nothing before you meant something to me. I can make you 1,000 pixels, but your focus is something I would fly you back to Denver if it meant reading the same clock as me. But I'm not willing to choose. Lead a life that is fulfilling or sit around and wait for you. I don't know if that small town has all the answers, but what's the point in holding on if it won't make the time go faster? Can't you see? You're alive in me. I'm the soil, you're the seed. There's a winner in the real world, repeating his own thoughts each mile down. If you're the art and I'm the canvas, sitting atop each other yet still so far apart. small town has all the answers, but what's the point in holding on if it won't make the time go faster? Can't you see? You're alive in me. Look at me with what you're asking for. I knew better than you did when you turned 24. Wrapped up tight and pulling neatly on your string. Oh, I got down on my knees and worshipped everything you did. I sold it to you. I gave it all to you. I'm not willing to choose. What's a life without the one who knows yourself more than you do? I don't know if that small town has all the answers, but what's the point in holding on if it won't make the time go faster? Can't you see? You're alive in me. I'm the soil, you're the sea.
the fruits of it. But it's been a great semester. Thank you all again for being here. I'm going to start by going through my research, and then at the end I'll give a segment of an audiobook I'm working on for my Capstone project. It's a historical novel about this person, Civil War scout, traveling 10 years, about 10 or 12 years later, through the Battle of the Bighorn, and then through the Battle of the Big Hole, and is kind of changing opinions about a lot of the historical events there. So getting into my research, excuse me, my thesis was that the rise of AI-generated voices will have negative impacts on the music industry, audiobook narration, and adjacent fields. So it's no secret that AI-generated voices are becoming more and more prevalent in daily life. We see them on TikTok, on Instagram, and a lot of advertising, on YouTube, in podcasts. It's almost everywhere. And there are plenty of cases of AI-generated songs and bands becoming more prevalent, and music and narration are some of the most affected fields in this. AI-embedded crime is also a serious issue that I'll be talking about later, as synthetic vocals have become more and more sophisticated over the past 4 years. Starting with AI in music, one of the biggest hurdles I ran into was the lack of numerical data. Unfortunately, AI is so new, and especially AI-generated voices within this field are so new that there's very little actual numerical data. So we don't necessarily know whether or not we've seen job losses yet, or the percentage of job losses at least, or loss in revenue for human musicians. So much of it is a lot of speculation at this moment. And in my research, one source said that many individuals maybe who are vulnerable to a lot of these changes are sound designers, followed by music editors, audio technicians, and sound engineers. And what Nathan Odie's research also found is that the music industry is still growing. However, one thing that he didn't point out was that we don't necessarily know how much of this is due to pure AI growth, where companies are, getting AI this and that, and getting a bunch of money just because they put AI after their name. It's a very common thing. And one thing that I also kind of asserted towards the end of this section is that many concerns are purely ethical rather than data-driven. However, we shouldn't necessarily discard a lot of these concerns just because we don't have numbers yet. And a lot of musicians may in the future be put out of work, and that's something that we need to start tackling and addressing very soon. And I concluded in this section that though some data may emerge soon, it's ultimately too early to tell what the numerical impact of AI is on the music industry. So just with some examples of how we're being changed, how the music industry is being changed, is a song called Heart on My Sleeve, for example. It was released back in 2024, and people were going crazy because it sounded like Drake and The Weeknd, two popular artists, were the ones singing this, but this was a complete lie. It was generated by some guy on TikTok. Both voices were generated completely by AI and without the permission of both artists. However, funnily enough, even Drake himself used AI to replicate the voice of Tupac Shakur in one of his songs, which earned a massive backlash, well-deserved, I think. AI bands and singers are becoming very common, such as Velvet Sundown as an example, which is a completely AI-generated rock band. However, AI is becoming so sophisticated to the point where a lot of times it's hard to tell, even if you are a musician. One thing I assert in this section as well is that it should be considered fraud in its own right to pass yourself off as completely original despite using someone else's voice. And we do see laws such as the Elvis Act in Tennessee, which essentially means that any impersonation, AI or not, should be attributed to the actual person, or the actual person should be given credit. Moving on to AI in audiobooks and text-to-speech, we have many programs such as Speechify, for example, that can narrate entire audiobooks simply by taking pictures of it. Celebrity voices are often available to users through these programs, and one thing I question, I don't have any evidence for this yet, is voice inflation. Will someone's voice become less valuable as you hear more of it replicated through AI? Well, and will we need to have even more significant protections to protect celebrity voices or even the voices of regular singers that could be ripped off by artificial intelligence? I point out how companies like Audible are making this way more available to its users, and while AI is really great for accessibility and increasing multilingual use in other fields, human beings are still love human voices, as I've found. AI is making leaps and bounds in this field, but ultimately it's humans that take the win in this. And kind of the scariest part that I got to is AI voices in fraud and scams. AI has been used in fraudulent activity as a whole, but AI voices are almost at the forefront of this. For example, a UK-based CEO was duped into sending £220,000 from his company to a completely false account simply because the caller mimicked his superior's voice. Another example is that AI can impersonate a loved one. So you might get a call from your mother, grandmother, daughter, cousin, anyone that sounds like they've been kidnapped and they're begging you to pay ransom. And however, this is completely made up, and people can use AI to generate someone's voice in distress and demand ransom. Another scary thing is that voice recognition softwares can be bypassed. So if you set up voice recognition in your bank, it can be bypassed using AI. And one thing I advocate for is simply education. Individuals can educate themselves on what AI sounds like, how AI is developing, but we should also be putting the onus on private institutions, these AI companies that are making this, to find ways to make sure that we can't be using these tools for fraud or for harm, as well as public institutions such as our government, whether it's our federal government, our local, state government, anyone. We should be letting our congressmen know that we aren't going to stand for stuff like this. And before I get onto the audiobook segment, just real quick, one thing I wanted to mention is that AI can't replace you. Your art is never replaceable, and your voice especially is never replaceable. One thing about AI is that it is not inspired by anything like you. Learning from all this art, all these great artists, and being inspired by it is exactly what makes your art worth listening to and worth consuming. So, getting off my soapbox there, I'll play you a small segment of Big Horn to Big Hole by Dan Cherry. Yes, it's my dad. And I hope you all enjoy this short segment. Big Horn to Big Hole by Dan Cherry. Narrated by Jake Cherry. Prologue. Daylight. Powder River, Montana Territory. March 17th, 1876. Wrapping a buffalo robe snugly around his shoulders and head, a young warrior steps out from his teepee's sheltered warmth. His small village lies along the frozen banks of the ice-covered Powder River. Large stands of cottonwood and timber make this a favored wintering area for his tribe. A blizzard keeps these Cheyennes huddled in the winter camp they share with several Oglala Sioux, but they must check on their pony herd frequently. The morning silence is shattered by a single car being shot, then by the thunder of dozens more breech-loading Springfields spewing death. The Powder River battle has begun. Before the attack is ended, more soldiers than Sioux or Cheyenne will have died, and dozens more will suffer frostbite. The hostiles, or non-treated tribesmen, will recapture more than half their pony herd, but they will suffer the loss of food, shelter, and belongings. The engagement ends with court-martial for the commander, who serves under General George Crook. The soldiers' reunited ranks will retreat south to Fort Fetterman. The battle will be viewed more as defeat than victory. At about the same time, on the same day, infantry troops at Fort Shaw, Montana Territory began a long and arduous march. Though more than 400 miles to the north and west, they experience much of the same blizzard conditions as Crook's troops endured. Many here will suffer frostbite too, and others will sustain snow blindness. Known as the Montana Column, they will march for 2 months before the third column of soldiers, the Dakota Column, even starts. That column will set out on May 17th from Fort Abraham Lincoln near Bismarck, Dakota Territory. The Dakota Column is the final wing of a planned three-way convergence on so-called hostiles, or non-treaty Sioux and Cheyenne tribes. These tribes have not complied with the unreasonable demand that they move to the reservation in the dead of winter. The order was issued December 3rd, 1875 by General Phil Sheridan. The tribe's deadline was January 31st, 1876. On June 17th, exactly 3 months to the day after his Powder River debacle, General Crook will once more fight non-treaty tribes. These will again be Sioux and Cheyennes led by Oglala war chief Crazy Horse. Again, these bands will stymie General Crook. They will send him, as before, retreating southward to rest, resupply, and await reinforcements. The Wyoming column's absence will soon be felt. On this date in March, however, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer is not even with his troops. He's been called by Congress to Washington, D.C. to testify in a corruption inquiry. Secretary of War William Belknap's agents are price gouging wares. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it.
my name is Abigail Henry. I'm also a senior in music tech, but I'm graduating this December, not right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about my research, which is this, and then I'll play a little bit of my creative project. So getting into this, I did this on the influence of social media in today's music, as this is something I've been kind of noticing is more prevalent today. Just a few facts. Social media plays a major role in modern music to this day. It influences song popularity and artist success, changes how fans is discovering music, as obviously this is a way for people to discover music nowadays. The global social media influence, there are 4.8 billion social media users in the world. Platforms are obviously making it way easier because of the worldwide connections that social media is now promoting. Artists are reaching listeners from all over the world because of it. It's becoming a more general, broad platform for people to, communicate, make music, release music, just get it out there, unlike it kind of used to be. Marketing is a major thing. Artists are obviously using it to market their songs, releasing their own stuff, putting it out there. It's making it easier to communicate. Artists can directly, message people, and their fans can message them directly. It's no longer a one-way communication channel, as it used to be, I guess. As everyone can give feedback now, it's a big, major more thing now. It's used because it's a way of promotion without record label support for independent artists. Business marketing, this side, it's always a changing industry in need of more marketing strategies, such as like the switch from physical products to online subscriptions. It's becoming more, Spotify versus CDs. It's more, everything's now online, so it's good for that. Obviously reaches large audiences. Everything from likes, social media pages, streams, videos, it's all used to market nowadays. Artist-fan connection, I noticed as I was doing my research, this was a big thing. It makes fans feel way more connected to them by, making videos, posting things. They're able to connect on like Twitch, streams. They're all just able to communicate via these platforms. Common platforms are TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the usual ones. And then independent artists again, like I said, they're no longer reliant on studios, engineers, producers. They just kind of do their own thing, release their own music, write their own stuff. Because of this, the rise in independent artists is very high, as this kind of never used to exist, as, record labels would have their back usually, but now they're just releasing their own stuff. It's made it way easier to get their own music out, like I said, and they're becoming very successful from this just because they can do this. This was another big part of my research. It's pretty much why I did this research, because I've noticed that these trending artists on TikTok or Instagram are becoming, popular and successful artists with no prior history of, making music or anything. I noticed a big part of it is the algorithms, obviously. Algorithms are the ones that put it out there, recommend them on everyone's pages. Everyone sees it, everyone hears it. And then these songs become very viral because of that, just because people are using them in audio, people are using them in songs, like, it's just becoming a thing. And then the streaming numbers are like directly affected from this. It makes the popularity way more popular. And then, it's pretty much just blowing up from this. And then here I just had a little bit of charts for this, such as this artist. You can see how like the streams go up and the popularity based on the streams from this go up. And then the chart of viral versus not. So the conclusion of my research was just pretty much that social media is a big player now in music, and it'll be exciting to see how it goes from there, as kind of like with the AI stuff too. That's going to be a big thing, and then obviously how it's making artists become very popular, even though they have no prior music, I guess, knowledge or anything. So we'll see how that goes. Independent artists that now have opportunities they never had before. So I guess we'll just see how that goes in the future. And then I will talk about my creative project now. I did a complete sound replacement of the movie The Red Turtle. It was a long process of recording sound effects, making my own music. It's about 8 minutes long. I'll probably just play a clip of it. Shout out to my sister who helped me record all the sound effects. It's a lot of water. It's very, very minimal, I'd say pretty slow. I kind of followed it after the original as far as that goes. It's very quiet, it's very calm. I'll play you a little bit of that.